In this video, you're going to watch the full recording of a private YouTube workshop that I recently ran for a group of elite business owners. Now, normally these workshops are something I run behind closed doors, but I wanted to record this one because it showcases the thinking behind how we use YouTube to bring the right people in and eventually turn that attention into clients as well. If you're a business owner, founder, or someone who wants to use YouTube to grow your business, this workshop is all about helping you understand what actually makes content work, not just how to get views, but how to actually attract right people and turn that into real opportunities for your business. In case you don't know who I am, my name's Ken and I run a YouTube agency called Social Wave, and we help business owners grow and scale revenue and leads organically through their channel, and we've driven over $24 million in revenue for our clients. Now, the session itself is pretty raw and conversational, and we've edited it in a way that lets you follow along with each of the key frameworks and topics as they come up. So here's the workshop. Hope you enjoy. We are in fundamentally what's called a trust recession. So a trust recession basically refers to the idea that there has never been a higher time currently than ever before that people are actually quite skeptical about what content they consume on these platforms, right? So whether or not you watch YouTube videos, whether you see like Instagram reels, whether you listen to a podcast, most people are taking it with a grain of salt. They're trying to make up their own minds whether or not what you're saying is the truth, whether you should believe in it. And people are what I call professional consumers, prosumers. So prosumers, if you guys all spend some degree of time on any of these platforms, over time you start to be able to discern quite easily in a very nuanced kind of way and almost on a subconscious level whether or not someone has an ulterior motive or not, or whether or not someone's being genuine, right? You can feel if you're being sold to, and you can feel whether or not something is being genuinely, sort of given value or for entertainment purposes as well. So attention is actually the currency here. So actually understanding that the most valuable asset for any organization, whether it's an individual or a group, is to do with attention. So if you can trade on attention, as meaning if you can grab someone's attention and retain someone's attention, then you have got a very strong competitive advantage. And so where is all the attention? The attention online is on these platforms here. So then the question boils down to going, well, if you've got these 6 or 7 platforms, how do you play the supposed attention game? How do you get people to watch your videos? How do you get people to consume your content? How do you compel people to do what you want them to do as well? And so Google did a study called 0 Moments of Truth. It was done in 2011, so it's about 13 years ago, but the principles still ring true. What it basically talks about is this concept of, and I might just sort of write it out here, is it talks about 7, 11, and 4, okay? So what it means by this is, for someone to know, like, and trust you, they have to spend 7 hours with you in 11 interactions, and then 4 touch points, right? Or locations. So how does this work? Basically, if you imagine meeting someone for the first time and you get to spend 7 hours with them, you met up 11 times in 4 different places, the rule says that if you spend that amount of time with someone, you can get someone to know, like, and trust you and very likely want to work with you or want to do something with you, right? This is how friendships form. This is how celebrityism happens. If you really like someone or you really know, like, and trust someone, then hitting this marker plus more generally leads to better outcomes and better results, right? So I use the example of you've got 2 friends. One friend who's always asking for money, wants to borrow things, they're a pain in the ass, they're basically a leech. And then you've got a friend who always has your back, when you're in trouble, they're always there for you. They never ask for anything from you, basically. They're always, introducing you to people and giving you value in the relationship. And so what ends up happening is friend number 1, who's the leech, when it comes time that you need something from them, you're not very inclined to go to them. You're more inclined to go with someone who you've got a better relationship with. And that's what we call relationship capital. The more relationship capital you have with someone, which is the currency here, the better that you can get someone to actually take action with what you want to do. And so the question is, how do you translate this into digital? The way to do it in digital is what we call building a parasocial relationship. So parasocial refers to one-way relationships. You think about your favorite celebrities, your favorite sports athletes, your favorite influencers, anyone that you meet, any of that is a one-way relationship, because if you met your favorite sports athlete, they wouldn't know who you are, but you would know who they are. You could strike up a conversation, talk about any number of things, right? So the goal here is to build that relationship capital, right? And think of it like a bit of a bank account. Every time you create content that's valuable, entertaining, educational, the idea is that if you rack up these numbers over time, then you're going to be able to build an audience, and building an audience then ultimately means that you can compel them to do what you need to do. So what does 7 hours mean? 7 hours refers to 7 hours of content. We're talking digital here, right? If someone can consume 7 hours of good quality content, and we'll get into what that content means for you guys and what some of the opportunities there are as well, then we want to hit this number, right? 11 interactions. What does that refer to? That could be emails, could be texts, could be obviously videos, right? Could be in person. So if you think about just like the number of touch points 11 times, that number works, okay? 4 locations, that usually refers to something like, I saw you on a podcast, I watched you on TV, I saw you at an event, right? I saw you on YouTube, I saw you on Instagram, blah, 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 emails, etc. Okay? So you need this mix because there's something about this mix that in the brain can't tell the difference between in person and digital. Like if you watch someone online versus if you meet someone and you hit those same numbers, the brain can't tell. The brain's equally going to build that rapport with you. So then the question is like, well, you've got options now. If you're going to hit these numbers, what are your options? And that's basically what's on screen at the moment. Each platform has its own, I would call, rules of engagement, right? There's different ways that you need to play within the rules of the platforms. For example, for Instagram or Facebook, it's short form videos, you know, up to 3 minutes. They recently changed it. It used to be 90 seconds, it's now 3 minutes. YouTube is much longer form. You can do it as long as you want, right? Podcast is ultra long form. It's 30 to 40 minutes usually. Then you've got LinkedIn, who's got its own game, and you know people have a certain culture. So each platform not only has its own rules of engagement, it actually has its own culture as well. Culture as being the way people expect your content to look like, the way you behave, the way you act. And if you act outside of the culture of these platforms, then usually people have some question marks. They're going, well, either you don't know what you're doing, or it's not interesting, or I'm skeptical. I'm not sure if you have some ulterior motive.
What about when it's a commercial relationship where I don't have to trust you?
Yeah.
So how does this fit with a commercial overlay?
For commercial, I'll give you an example. I've got a client who's an accountant, right? There's thousands of accountants in Australia. Is he the best chartered accountant out there? He's probably not, right? He's probably not even the top 10, the top 50, the top 100. But the reason why people choose him over someone else is because of know, like, and trust factor. This is what you're building here. You're building a trust in the relationship before you're ready to transact. So what you're inevitably doing is, with all of this stuff that I'm going to be talking about, is you're essentially, terrible word, but you're lubricating the relationship with somebody. You make it easy for someone to transact and do commercial business with you or do something with you. So what ends up happening is someone will watch, I'll use the accounting example, they'll watch 7 hours of footage and his content is about, I'll show you how to tax plan, I'll show you how to reduce your taxable income, or how you do asset protection, I'll teach you this and that, structuring, et cetera, et cetera. Someone's going to watch that, who's their target audience, and go, I like this guy because he's taught me so much and he's given it out for free because I'm just consuming this content out there. It's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, and et cetera, right? And I'm seeing it at 11 interactions, you know, I'm getting an email from him, I'm watching him on YouTube, I see him on Instagram, I see him on a podcast, right? And that's on the different locations. And over time, it's this thing called demand generation. So demand generation is just another term for brand awareness. And people say brand awareness because they think of brand as like, you know, sometimes people get confused like logo design and how things are pretty and what sort of font and typography that you use. Brand awareness and demand generation refers to the idea that most businesses, and to Cam's question, are trying to capture people who are actively looking for a service right now. So if you're looking for an accounting firm right now, you're probably in the 3% of the market right now who's actively looking. Right? And that's where usually people go. They go to YouTube and, they go to Google and they type in, they're like, I'll go for an accountant here in, Chifley Square and an accountant in Sydney, okay? But that's only 3% of the market. The other 97% are dormant. They're not actually actively looking for anything, not active to do anything. But the idea is that, let's imagine 6 months down the track, person A who was watching this content, by end of financial year, they go, look, my accountant's shit house. They're not doing anything, right? You know what? I think I'm going to change accountants. And then all of a sudden, light switch flicks. Oh, I've been watching this guy. This guy's interesting. You know what? Maybe I should call him. Maybe I should think about this, right? And so it's that sort of front of mind awareness that you're building here. And so to your question, the idea is to make this easier to do business before you actually start doing business. Yeah, it's not so much the afterthought of it. Now, you can transact earlier, as meaning you don't have to have these markers hit and still do business together. It's not saying that it's impossible, but if you want to maximize this, because it's a numbers game when it comes to digital, it's the sustainability of it all as well, because the backbones of doing business or just anything in general is relationships, right? So if you don't have the relationship capital, you don't have the trust, right? You don't like each other, then it's really hard, no matter what, to do business in the long term as well. So I think that this is like the foundation just to get everyone to understand, because if you guys sort of understand this premise, everything that we do in terms of activity should try and accelerate ourselves to this point as fast as possible. So let's talk about platforms, right? So just up on the screen, I'm just going to write it down here. You've got YouTube, you've got Facebook, you've got Instagram, you've got TikTok, you've got podcasts, right? You've got SEO, which is Google, right? These are what I call...
SEO and SEM.
SEO and SEM are different. They're using the same platform, which is Google. SEO is getting ranked number one as, being the first result of a certain keyword you put in. Search engine optimization. You're optimizing to organically rank number one, as meaning Google rewards you for being number one. SEM is Google Ads, what we call PPC, pay per click. So you're essentially, I guess the example I give is like you're at a theme park and SEO is essentially just your general admission. You just got to queue up and eventually you'll get to the front of the queue. SEM is I'm going to pay you a fast pass, an express pass, and you get put in the front of the line.
It's your frequent flyer points, gold,
Correct.
silver category.
Yeah, exactly. And so they'll go, well, if you pay me, I'm just going to put you at the front of the queue and you'll get more exposure than I do. And so Google has attention. Podcasts are a little trickier, which I'll get into in a second. TikTok has attention because there's an audience on TikTok. Same with Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So then the question is, where is my audience located? It's always the thing that you start with. So let's start with YouTube, right? YouTube, the best way I would describe it is, in my opinion, is probably the number one platform out there for any organization or business that wants to generate either business or they want to garner support or they want to build an audience, a high value audience, right? And that's because if you look at the data, and I'll send this to you guys afterwards, there was a bit of research done actually in the US about the number of users on each platform and also the household income per user. YouTube stood out to be the top. I think it was like 90% of users on YouTube had a household income more than $100,000. Whereas with TikTok, it was 27%. So we've got a delta of about 60, 70% essentially.
How does YouTube though in terms of financials of users?
Financials of users?
In terms of you talked about quoted.
Yep, YouTube's higher actually. YouTube's higher than LinkedIn. And it's because YouTube has a larger percentage of the population in user base than LinkedIn does. So for example, 25 million in Australia, I would say about 85%, 90% are on YouTube, whereas LinkedIn has about 40%. Yeah. So that representation of the overall population, if you only did LinkedIn, for example, you're missing out on about 50% of the total market size just by not being on the platform as well. So YouTube has the biggest market capture of all. YouTube also is, in terms of 711.4, is the fastest way to get there, right? If you think about how quick it is to get to 7 hours of content on YouTube, longer form content gets there faster than short form content, which is generally like, say 90 seconds, 90-second videos or 60-second videos, which is the average length on Instagram or TikTok. You do the math, you need 420 videos just to get there as well.
I've watched YouTube's format. It's now gone to this short format. It's become quite frustrating because you used to get really good, decent, long-term, rich content. You've now got to search for it because it's pushed all this short form format.
It's like YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why has it done that given what you just said?
So YouTube is not immune to the gold rush of what's happening across the other platforms. They're going, you know what, we're losing market share or the market share is shifting and people are going to short form. We got to do something about it to retain our users. But like anything, like Bitcoin, like anything that's explodes in popularity in a short space of time, you always get obviously the sort of like, there's always a swing back. And so what we're seeing actually right now, because TikTok sort of became mainstream about 2-3 years ago during COVID. So when TikTok came out, just as a bit of a history lesson, is Instagram then moved to Reels, which was short. Like Instagram had IGTV, if you remember back in the day, right? It used to have these IGTV, Instagram TV. That's what they used to call it. Yeah. This was only a few years ago, but that's what they had. And it had a completely different algorithm, right? It operated a different way. And basically what the old algorithms used to do is it used to be based on a popularity contest, as meaning the more followers you had, the more views you could get on your content and the more likely you're going to hit 711.4, right? But when TikTok came out, they flipped it on its script. They basically said, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. You can have 0 followers or you can have 100,000 followers. If, for example, your video is good, which I'll define exactly how they measure good, if your video is good, we will show it to as many people as you. And so what ends up happening is, I've actually got a diagram to show you guys exactly how it works.
Whilst you're pulling up that, where does X fit into your list here?
X is something that I generally don't recommend, especially in Australia.
The interesting thing about X is or Twitter formerly, it's very common for in the academic world because that's where researchers, scientists, they share their research findings and that's their community. It has been like that before Elon Musk took it over.
Well, I mean, I was going to say, like, obviously, things like sports, anything that's mainstream, Twitter will or X will do quite well in. Like, whatever's like, I would say usually like a reflection of mainstream media tends to do quite well on X. But then there are sub-communities or niches, for example, like the scientific community that do quite well on it as well. Yeah. So it is valid. I can get into it in a second and just explain to you what some of those algorithms are. Just so you guys have visualization. These algorithms used to be algorithms that based on who you follow. So the popular kid at the party gets the most attention to what's called interest-based algorithms. So what ends up happening is when someone posts a video, and this is, I have to stress videos because you can't now actually grow on any of these platforms through images. You have to post videos. Video is the only medium that allows for growth organically. You can run ads, which you have to pay to play, but I'm just talking purely about organic at the moment, and this is the most low-cost way of doing it, right? So when you post a video, what ends up happening is these algorithms, and we're talking like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook will do this, YouTube will do this as well to a certain degree, is they will push it out and they'll put your video into a sandbox, call it 100 people. And based on that, they'll show 20% of those people in that sandbox are your followers, 80% are non-followers. It used to be that the other way around, they'll show 80% to your followers and then 20% to non-followers. The reason why they've done this is they've incentivized more people to create content and have a bigger opportunity to actually grow as well. Because there was a while on these platforms where you couldn't grow anymore. Like the sort of the top 1% was taking most of the attention, the market share as a result. And so they kind of democratized this, or TikTok democratized this by coming out and going, you know what, doesn't matter if you have an audience, you can be a small player, you could start today and you could have 1 million followers tomorrow. So what they would do is they would put the content out, and then the question is, how do they deem between good and bad content, and how do you actually get reach? So what ends up happening is there's sort of two scenarios. There's good content and bad content. So the way they define it is there's a few data points for good and bad. So the way they define good content is they look at the viewers and they go, what proportion of the viewers watch most of the video? So average watch time, average view percentage, repeat watches, how many times do I watch it multiple times? And then they talk about engagement, which is likes, comments, shares, and saves. Right? There's only really 4 buttons if you look at your TikTok or your Instagram feed.
Average view time.
Average view time, average view duration. So they're different. One's a percentage, one's just an absolute number. So, 60 seconds versus I watch 70% of the video. Yeah, because some videos could be 10 minutes on TikTok actually, because it allows for 10 minutes.
What about when you speed it up?
Doesn't really look into that too much. It just looks at seconds and percentages, basically. In terms of engagement, it doesn't really measure comments that much. Comments don't have a huge influence on the performance of a video. But what does have a performance impact is likes, shares. So if you're on Instagram, you put it on your Instagram story, or saves. And shares could be like, oh, I'm sending it to someone on WhatsApp, or I press the little paper plane button and I want to share it to someone. The saves, the bookmarks, is really critical as well, because that tells people, or tells the algorithm that this is a valuable piece of content that someone wants to come back later. So they're trying to measure that. And so if those metrics are high, like high percentage of that audience hits that, high view duration, high repeat watches, high engagement, then the algorithm goes, this is great content. I'm going to show it instead of to 100 people, I'm going to show it to 1,000 people that I think are similar or interested. And that's why it's called interest-based algorithms, because what they can do now is they can measure and figure out what you like. And so they'll categorize content, and then they will pair content creators or content that's been created with people interested in that content. And that's why if you've spent any time on these platforms, usually over a period of time, it gets scarily accurate at finding content that you like.
Yeah. I've got a question just about the, working out what's a good YouTube video. And you said they now have sent it to 20% of followers and 80% of non-followers. Does that mean that not all followers get the new video?
Correct.
So if you're trying to follow someone, you don't even get the video.
Correct.
How does that work? How do you get to?
Yeah. So the way that works is basically, they say 2025 is actually the death of the follower, because followers don't matter as much as they used to, because these algorithms have changed.
So you actively search your favourites?
Well, it's now based on your viewing behaviour. So instead, they track not you telling them, I want to see this. They track based on how you actually behave, because sometimes what you tell them is different to how you behave. So for example, you could say, look, I really want to watch this YouTuber, right? But then what you'll do is you'll subscribe, and yeah, it'll go, oh, okay, initially you're really interested in it. And let's just say it sends you 3-4 videos in a row, but you never click on it, you never watch it. Well, just because you subscribe to it doesn't mean you're interested in it. And so what it ends up doing is it curates your feed to a point where it understands what you like. So another example is if you spend any time on Instagram, you've got Instagram stories up the top, right? And then you've got your feed down the bottom. Just watch how you behave, right? Let's say, for example, it puts a creator at the front with Instagram stories. if you are someone who opens it up and let's say they've got 10 stories in a row and you like jump off after the first or the second one, you will watch over time. If you keep doing that, it will push that Instagram story to the back of the queue and it'll stop showing that to you. So it's no longer chronological. It's actually just based on consumption and how interested you are in the actual content creator. Yeah. So that's for YouTube. That's also for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the social media platforms. The only one that doesn't do that right now is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's always been 2 or 3 years behind every other platform, but LinkedIn just started releasing vertical videos, which was 3 years ago for everyone else. So they're always a little late to the party, but they usually get there eventually as well. So what you see now is what's happening will probably occur on LinkedIn in about 2 or 3 years' time as a trend. They've got different ranking factors and weightings according to what your activity is, but usually, I mean, something like YouTube is usually focused on average view duration and the amount of times you click on a thumbnail and a title to go ahead and watch it, right? So even if you click it, if you don't watch much of it, it sometimes deems that you're not satisfied with the video. So there's a lot of nuance to it, yeah.
So what does that mean for the person putting up the video? How you constantly having to keep attracting a new audience, aren't you? Is that you can't just be going to those that already say they're following you and like you.
So instead of looking at it as, oh, I have an account of 10,000 followers, therefore I should be getting X number of views per video because I've got this many number of followers. Instead, they are now measuring it based on the merits of each individual video. And so you could be someone who has 1 million followers or subscribers, but you might put out a video that's not great, the market doesn't think it's great, and you only get 10,000 views. But the next one that you put out could get 1 million. And so they measure that just on its individual basis. They're not wedded or married to how many followers you've got anymore. They don't care for that anymore. It's just another data point for them to understand who likes your content and who doesn't. But the thing that tests everything the most is really around the user behavior. So I've seen creators with millions of followers and their videos are averaging like 10, 15,000 views. That's really bad because it's like you really should be getting like significantly bigger numbers, right? But then the inverse is true. I've seen creators who have 10,000 followers but they're doing like 50, 100, 150,000 views each, right? And so the numbers are never absolute. There's no benchmark about best numbers and lowest. It's proportionate to what it is that you have in terms of audience size as well. So for example, I don't actually spend that much time on my personal Instagram. I consume. But one day I actually put out a video of my son who went through basically a dog flap because we locked ourselves out and got him to grab a key. Something very just call it viral, right? Video got 5.3 million views. I had 900 followers. So people watched it, and what I noticed was, for example, people would leave comments, they would share it, they would bookmark it and come back and watch it again. I had people I knew, they were just like, oh, I saw your video on this. Of course you get like followers, but then what's most important is the average view duration was extremely high, and the repeat watch was extremely high. So it tells, so there's this thing that I always say like in content that no one ever talks about. They talk about data, but the one thing we need to remember is what's called satisfaction. Is the content satisfying? And these platforms have a way to measure satisfaction, right? And we don't necessarily know exactly because they're machine learning, it's all AI, it's all trained, but they've gotten very good at figuring out whether or not you are satisfied with a piece of content or not. And so the question is, how do you create satisfaction, right? Because satisfaction is the sort of call it qualitative data point that we fundamentally inherently sort of psychologically know, but we don't know exactly, like you couldn't describe, say, a satisfying video necessarily, or you probably have like 20 definitions of a satisfying video, right? So to go into each platform, for example, YouTube for me accelerates 711.4, right? It's literally for me one of the best platforms. The barrier of entry to get into YouTube, to do a good YouTube is a little bit higher because they're longer form, right? You're not spending 60, 90 seconds on a video, you're spending sometimes 20, 30, 40 minutes on a video. And there's actually a real pendulum swing towards super long form videos, an hour and a half. Some people are putting out their entire online course, which is 7 to 8 hours of content in a single video for this, right? So the thing about YouTube is there's just so many micro communities and so many different movements and things like that. It's hard to say, well, this is what YouTube is because YouTube has many different forms, right? But these three are quite similar. It's similar in the form that they're short form. And basically they have what's called they have a lot more what we call nurturing mechanisms. So nurturing refers to like Instagram stories. It's like if you follow anyone who does a lot of Instagram stories, it's oftentimes like, oh, I'm going to show you behind the scenes, or I'll take a photo of what my day looks like. Something that I wouldn't have on my grid permanently, but I would show you for 24 hours and it would disappear, right? There's a lot of that. You can send obviously like messages, like direct messages or DMs. So there's an ability to connect with a creator by doing this, okay? Whereas with YouTube, it's kind of like one way, it's like broadcast, it's like TV in a lot of ways, right? So this is long form. Podcast is also long form, but podcast relies on these platforms to grow and amplify a podcast. Because if you think about it, when you launch a podcast can't organically grow. Because a podcast, if you think about it, is like you just put it up on Spotify, you put it up on Apple Podcasts. But when was the last time, I don't know if everyone here listens to podcasts, but when was the last time you actually just discovered a podcast? You don't, right? Like you the only way you discover it is through probably these platforms or some form of word of mouth or some other traffic avenue that's brought that awareness to you. And then you go, oh, let me go look for the podcast and I'll find it, I'll subscribe to it. So a podcast on its own cannot grow. But if you look at some of the biggest podcasts in the world, they tend to put their long form podcasts, 4 episodes on YouTube, and then they actually cut the small pieces across all of these short form platforms as well. And I'll get into how you leverage this in a second, okay? SEO, I'll touch on real quick. SEO, to put it this way, is essentially an endangered species. So Google is not as influential as it was 5 or 10 years ago. And that's just because AI has taken over. So people are using AI now to get their search results, but also because these platforms have actually influenced people's buying decisions before here. So the way I describe it is SEO is now just a toll gate for these platforms. So if you're someone who's like, let's say, for example, I want to buy a fridge, I want to buy a washing machine, right? Something that's a few $100s. I'll do all my research here. I'll read about it. I'll watch it. No. And I'm going, okay, I've got my list of maybe 2 or 3, and I know which retailers I want to buy from. So you go and type in JB Hi-Fi or Bingley or whatever, and then you'll hit here, and then you'll Google it, and then you'll click on the result, and then you'll go on the website. But it's not because you went on SEO to get educated on the buying decision. So people aren't relying on like websites these days to actually decide on what they want to do. They're actually relying on consuming video content now to actually make buying decisions. And then lastly, with LinkedIn, is like I said, LinkedIn still follows the popularity contest algorithm. So the more followers you have, the more connections that you have, the more reach you have basically as well. It still relies on some degree of quality content, right? But not as reliant as some of the others, right? It's still a feed that just serves you up based on who you follow, essentially. Yeah.
I have no idea if this is common, but I noticed with me and my friends, people around my generation, if I'm interested in a product or review something, I don't really go on those platforms until a bit later. I think maybe the first stage of interaction would be actually Googling the product, but I'd have a keyword with Reddit because I'd rather listen to actual strangers who aren't, they're not producing content or trying to sell you something, just giving them their personal interactions with whatever that product is, and then from there, that's when I start, searching it up on other platforms to do more background on that before I really go and buy something.
Yeah, there are still people who make their buying decisions through Google. Absolutely, I'm not saying you are, but some people may discover through Google initially, but the part that influences buying decisions the most is here. Yeah. So you might discover oh, my starting point's Google. Yep. So people the starting point to say your buying experience, the starting point for you to do your research might be Google. You might go to Google and be like, okay, again, the fridge example, I've got these 5 models that I'm interested in. But where people go usually after that is they usually go on these platforms, and this is where it's most influential. Yeah, this is where it influences people to buy because of 7-Eleven and 4, right? And so you're 100% right.
I'm more influenced by reading what people's experiences with stuff on Reddit more than I am.
On Reddit, okay.
No, when I search stuff, I have the word Reddit there because I just want to know what common people like me are just, what their actual experiences are. Because it's an anonymous platform, right? They're not trying to sell you anything. Well, maybe they are, but it's not as obvious as it is on the other platforms.
You are what I would classify as a more sophisticated buyer than the majority. So we're talking the vast majority of buyers don't even understand this. If you look on Facebook, which is now sort of age group about 45 to 60, you could sell them honestly anything. and they would buy it in. And this is why like phishing scams target sort of an older demographic, is because they're not as sophisticated. They haven't seen the same tactics, the same strategies and things like that as well, right? And so these platforms, if you talk about the main population, the standard deviation is that the majority of people don't realize what you realize, which is, oh, I know that this content sometimes has an ulterior motive. People don't know that. People are just blindly actually just watching this stuff.
Is that why when you buy something, or if you buy something and they want you to review it, and that goes into these other, that they can push that comment?
Oh, yeah.
That they feed
like
it,
Trustpilot.
I imagine that's what, they're always pushing you to give this feedback.
It's a little bit different. It's like what we call social proof. And so the idea is that, the more reviews you can garner, the more testimonials and case studies you can build, then the more proof you've created, right? And usually for service-based businesses, organizations that don't, have a physical product like on an iPhone, go, hey, test it out and try and use it. You couldn't do that with an accounting firm. You can't, come and trial it out for 5 minutes and see if you like it. Like, you wouldn't be able to do that, right?
Does that content, so give you an example, I've recently used Conveyancer, and the Conveyancer was very good, and she knew, I thought she was very good, and then the company sent me this kind of, I don't know if it was Trustpilot, but I had a review, which you put a comment, and I did because they had done a good job. But as I was doing it, I felt sort of sucked in. Like I felt like all my comments are going to be taken somewhere and promoting them in a way that I didn't want to be sort of. Anyway, I felt like I was giving them this gift of commentary. It wasn't just face to face to them. It was something for them to build their brand online. Is that what they're doing?
Look, yes, there are businesses, a lot of them do that. They sort of put it in different places, whatever your review is. Like, they'll take your Google reviews or your Trustpilot reviews and I'll put it on my website and things like that. That's what I would call more of a conversion mechanism. So it's like, if the traffic's come from somewhere, like, say what Peter's talking about, it's like, okay, I've done my research, that sort of stuff. I've whittled it down to maybe these 2 or 3 options. Then you go on their website, and if you see that they've got testimonials, they've got reviews and things like that, it's really just going to build a lot more trust as well, right? Just, again, lubricates the process of buying, essentially. But then people are wising up now to like written reviews and testimonials. They're kind of like, it's so easy to replicate, and it's, you don't know if it's real or not. There's no verification process. So I find that they're losing their impact a little bit in this process as well. And that's why, I sort of, not to get too political, but it's like, this is why like the presidential campaign, when Trump won it, actually showcased exactly what people trust and what people don't trust. People don't trust mainstream media anymore. There's an ulterior motive there. We know that, right? People also don't trust even some of these platforms, what's being put out there, because they're like, I don't know if these are bots. I don't know if someone's got some political agenda. To Peter's point, it's like, I want something more, call it agnostic. I want something that just doesn't have, some sort of agenda to it, right? And so people go on Reddit, they go on communities. But what people are fundamentally now doing is they go, I'm going to make up my own mind. And where people are gravitating towards all the time is in long form, in this or in this. So Trump went on this big podcast campaign. I think he went on probably 7 or 8 of the biggest podcasts in the US, including Joe Rogan, who's the biggest one. And he just said, let's just sit down for 3 or 4 hours. I'll just talk about anything. No agenda. I don't have any ulterior, well, he's got an ulterior motive, but he's like, I'm not preparing this, Whereas Kamala, if you actually watch what she did, she went podcast too, but it was all prescribed. It was all rehearsed. And so people can tell when that happens. People can tell the difference between genuine and authentic versus rehearsed and overly produced. And this is what I'll get into in a second. Content is heading towards something that's way lesser in production quality now. Like, the pendulum swung back.
It's more basic.
It's more basic.
That's good.
Yeah. People are sick of the wool pulled over their eyes, and they go, I'll make up my own mind. And so Trump is happy to go on for 3 to 4 hours and just talk about whatever he wants, whether he pushes buttons or not. Right? The point is, people go, you know what? At least I know this guy's telling the truth, because there's no hiding behind anything. It's not rehearsed. Joe's asking me whatever questions out there, and he's answering them, right? And so that authenticity is like, actually, and this goes back to the trust recession. We're in a trust recession for this exact reason, right? Everyone's trying to make a buck off you. You still need to build trust, and you have to build it in an authentic way. So the question is, like, what is an authentic kind of way? So you've got to understand the culture of these platforms, and the idea behind this is to go, you know what? Don't create, which is what Kamala did. Document. Like, you're just out there, you just have the camera on, you're just filming whatever, because you don't know what's going to be useful or not, and I'm just going to show it later down, and I make up your mind whether or not you like it or not. And so, how I was saying, like, people sort of maybe overcomplicate the production process of content now. It's actually gone the other way. It's gone really easy, really simple. So for example, on YouTube, like I said, way less of the sort of whiz-bang pops. Like, you don't see, like, the motion graphics, the animations, some of these types of content. What you're seeing now is oftentimes a guy with a whiteboard for 45 minutes teaching about something really, really deep that you're interested in. And then because it's an interest-based algorithm, YouTube will just find your audience and it'll just connect you with the audience you want. Your job is just to deliver satisfaction, right? So what we want to do here, for example, with YouTube is find out the topics that people want and are interested in learning about, and then just make sure you deliver the most satisfying content that you possibly can do. And that's not about production quality. It's about a few things. The first one is topic. You have to make sure you choose the right topic. So I'll give you sort of I call it a hierarchy of importance here when you do content. First thing, most important is topic. The reason why topic is most important, I use the analogy, is like, imagine going to a room of golf lovers and you want to convince them that football is the greatest game in the world. You're not going to, because they have no interest in football. They're golf lovers. So if you don't pick the right topic, doesn't matter what you do downstream. You can have the best production quality, you have pyrotechnics, you can show the best highlight reels. They won't care because they're lovers of golf and they have no interest in learning about anything else. So topic is number one, right? Number two is what we call packaging. Packaging refers to, specifically in YouTube, is like your thumbnails and your titles. So it's kind of like the bait on your fishing line. If you can't attract them to come to you and say, click on your video, then it doesn't really matter. You can have the best video in the world. It's just the world's best video that gets no views. And so we need to understand how to actually get clicks, right? And the measure of, you were going to say, yep?
Clickbait.
So clickbait's an interesting thing. I always say, people go, that's clickbait. And I said, well, how do you know that that's clickbait? You generally only know that that's clickbait is when something is not satisfying, and it's because you've clicked on it with a promise, and that promise has not been delivered on the back end of the content you watched. Because something could sound really outrageous, but if you watched it and it was true, and it was satisfying to watch, then it's not clickbait anymore. It's great. It's a great title. It's great packaging, right? So maybe just a more simplified version is if you went out to the shops and you went to Woolies and you said, oh, this is salt and vinegar chips. I'm very interested. I was like, I feel like salt and vinegar chips. You open it up and you taste it and it's pizza flavored. You're gonna be pissed off because you expect, the packaging made a promise to you. Packaging said there's gonna be salt and vinegar inside, it's gonna be crisps, it's gonna be great, it's fresh, blah, blah, blah. And when you put it in your mouth and you taste it, you're like, this is not what was promised to me. It's the same thing in content as well, right? So this is what's called expectation setting. So packaging refers to a promise you've made to the viewer of what the video should be. And someone's making an assumption going, well, based on the packaging, this is what it should look like, or this is what it should sound like. I'm hoping that it'll sound like this. And they will decide, usually in the first few seconds, whether or not they're going to stay on or not.
Is that why when you watch a YouTube video, the content creator will often say, I'm going to talk about, and they sort of go over quite in detail what they're going to talk about before they even start. And you're like, hurry up, get on with it. Is that why they do it? Because they want you to stay long enough to ensure you're watching the right video?
Yeah, so the best way to describe this is like the book cover. What you're talking about is the chapters in a book. You won't read a book unless you always flip to the chapters first because you're like, well, what are the key talking points? What's the agenda on this thing? Like, is it worth me like sitting down for a few hours and watching it? So what you're doing constantly is you're qualifying the content and deciding, is it worth my time? And that's what Cam's basically saying. You're doing this on a very subconscious level and conscious level at different times in it. Sometimes very overt and very outright because you're like, God, this is a waste of time because it's so bad. But a lot of the time it's like, it's quite subtle. It's like, the shades of gray. You're kind of like sort of deciding. And if the video doesn't incentivize you enough because it's not structured the right way, then you're going to lose viewers basically, right? So the name of the game is always just hook and then retention. How do you grab someone's attention? How do you retain someone's attention? Because going back to the algorithms, these algorithms are basically built for this. They measure the success of your videos based on that because they deem a good video based on how long someone watches the video, how often someone watches it, right? How much they engage in it as well. That's why I say videos that are satisfying or emotionally move you are the best types of videos because those videos generate engagement, they generate buzz. So the example of my son going through the dog flap, people were just like hilarious. It was like watching a sitcom, they thought it was the best thing. Everyone felt compelled to leave a comment behind saying, good job, that sort of thing, right? So emotional type setting videos tend to do particularly well. But after packaging, what we talk about, and this is what Georgie's talking about, is the hooks. So hooks are essentially that first, for an Instagram and TikTok video, that's usually the first 2 to 3 seconds, 5 seconds, call it that. For a YouTube video, it's about the first 30 seconds. So every platform has a different, sort of like hook duration, right? How much people are willing to sit there and make an assessment whether or not I continue to watch it. And so the formula oftentimes with hooks, there's many different ways to do hooks, But a hook, basically, the premise of a hook is to answer the subconscious question in someone's head going, why should I continue watching this video, right? So sometimes it can be like people show outrageous statements, they say things. Oftentimes, like for example, people can show you something, what we call a visual hook, right? They go, I watched a video the other day and the guy said, look, this is a state of jobs report for 2025 in the US. And I'm actually going to go through and explain to you what are the most important parts. He showed his iPad because he knew what he was doing. He's like, I'm going to actually show you physically this report. He could have just sat there and went, I'm going to tell you what's in the state of jobs report, and he not show anything whatsoever. And so there's different ways to basically hook people in. And again, it just goes back to how well you know the audience and how well you can actually retain and attract their attention. So we need to also understand the audience that you're going after, like who are they? Like, what's their psychology? What are they interested in, right? This sort of stuff. The more obsessive you are with your audience, the more likely that you're going to be able to hang on to them. And so the goal with content, it used to be like, let's just get as many views as we want. Let's go viral, that sort of stuff. The goal is not that, right? For most organizations, it's about finding the right people and then repelling the people that you don't want. Because you don't want a situation with these algorithms where you're attracting the wrong audience and as a result, they're never actually going to actually support. They're not going to donate. They're not going to provide funds, anything like that. So as an example, right, you could just put a video on of your home cat or your dog, which is usually one of the most popular videos out there. It doesn't matter what you do with it. It'll do well. It'll get millions of views. But that's not the right type of content to attract it. So we want consistency of themes and topics in the videos to get the right types of attention and the right types of views as well, okay? So with the hooks, without sort of going into too much detail, I've got, I can send you guys a bit of a, kind of like a playbook or examples of lots of different hooks. But a hook fundamentally is something that you could say verbally, visually, right? Or you can do it in terms of on a production hook. So that could be something that you edit in a certain way, which is usually not, this stuff doesn't do as well. This stuff generally does quite well. Again, just going back to sort of a more basics level, more fundamental level here as well.
So what about humour?
Humour works. Humour can work. Yep. I think it's just oftentimes, if you think about the viewing experience, they're sort of just scrolling through, right? Or like on YouTube, they're just scrolling through. Usually when a video shows up, you can use humour definitely to grab their attention as well. It just depends on the topic, depends on the context of what you're trying to talk about. You want it, but you do want to make sure your hooks are relevant to what you're going to say next, right? Because people are going to be like, you're taking the piss, you're just trying to grab my attention, right? So again, people have very little patience for that. Then what we talk about is lead-in anticipation. So this is, can't spell today. Georgie, this is what you're talking about, which is the book chapters, right? So they go, cool, all right, I picked the right topic. You're into golf, I'm going to do a video about golf. Packaging, so for example, if it's on YouTube is, thumbnail, title, that talks about something to do with golf. And then the hook refers to, you might be holding a golf club up, or you might be saying, you know what, this is what happened at the last PGA tournament, essentially, right? And then in anticipation refers to, okay, now they've got your attention. You don't say that, but you sort of imply that. You say, in this video, I'm actually going to share with you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They go through this. But the one thing that you're talking about, Georgie, is you're supposed to do it, but you're supposed to do it as effectively and efficiently and as quickly as possible. And I think a lot of creators, or a lot of people do content, they take too long. So there's this concept of TTV. That makes you want to do, yeah. So double-edged sword, right? So there's this concept called TTV, time to value, and this is very important, right? It's basically everything that I've been saying so far, but there's just, if you call it this, time to value refers to, like, get to the point. What's the fastest per unit of time that you can get to the valuable part of the video, right? Because if you watch some of those lifestyle creators, like the ones on YouTube, like, welcome back to my channel. Oh, it was a terrible day. I'm a little bit sunburnt. Like, you're like, what are you doing? Like, I clicked on a video. I want you to give me entertainment or educational value, right? So time to value needs to be as short as possible, right? It needs to be down. To the point where now, even some of the hooks that we're doing for our videos, we just sometimes get straight into it. You're like, you clicked on the video, say something about golf. You're like, in this video, I'm going to be talking about, there's not even a hook. It's like we're going straight into like lead-in anticipation.
How do you know,
You gotta know your audience.
You know your audience, yeah, correct.
Marketing.
The better you know your audience, the better. But the only way to understand more about your audience is to create content so you can get more data to know more about your audience. So there's a sort of like it's a cycle. Yeah, correct. Feeds itself. So that's why people go, well, what now? I said, just start. Like it's imperfect start is better than a perfect, like waiting out for a perfect start. And so you guys might put out the initial videos, the content, and you'd be like, God, like these are doing terribly. They're not great. That's okay. What I'm showing you here is just basically the ingredients to the recipe. You can say, oh, look, we're missing a little bit of salt here. We actually need to add, we need to add a little bit of a hook. We're missing a hook here. Or the lead in anticipation just took too long to build up. Or we just chose the wrong topic. Like the topic is wrong. No one's interested in this sort of thing. So you should be able to, over time, be able to diagnose it. And you can do that through the back end of analytics. Like on YouTube, they've got what's called a retention curve. Now, we're not going to cover that here, but you could see, it can actually show you when people drop off on the video. And if they've dropped off within the first 30 seconds and it's a steep, drop off in the clip, you can say, well, the hook was probably not good, right? So there's different ways to actually diagnose what you've got wrong as well. The last one is deliver the goods. Oh, sorry, the second last one is deliver the goods. And the last one is CTA. Deliver the goods is just what most people do best. If you're the expert or you got something that you want to tell, this is just the meat and potatoes of the video, right? So it's like, now that I've picked the right topic, I've packaged it in a way that you're going to click on it, you're interested, and I've given you, I've reaffirmed your expectations by doing the hook, and I've told you what to expect. My job now is to pay off the promise that I've given you, right? Do the job, correct, exactly. So the deliver the goods, it should be fundamentally the easiest part, but always keep in mind time to value. Do not blab on, get to the point. Correct, yeah, exactly. So if you deliver the goods, then you actually build relationship capital and permission to ask for a call to action. Now there's a few ways to ask for a call to action. Some people do call to actions within the video. They go, hey, if you like this, follow, like, subscribe. Or if you want to donate, I've left a link down in the description box below or in the captions or a link in the bio, right? But a lot of people now aren't doing call to actions in the videos. Instead, they're putting the call to actions in the captions, or they're putting it in the description of the YouTube video.
Captions are the words that are at the bottom that you can read while you're listening.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So they're putting it there because they understand that the more integrated your selling feels, the more natural it doesn't feel like sales, the more likely someone's going to buy from you. Overt selling, outright selling, always repels people, most times, unless you've got really strong relationship capital, 7, 11, and 4, right? So Gary Vee, great marketer, wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook, right? So jab as meaning, jab is giving value. Every time you give value, every time you make someone's life better, you entertain someone, you educate someone, that's a jab. So it's been around for quite some time now, probably 10 plus years. But he coined this term because he's a phenomenal marketer, runs a big marketing agency out in the US, got a Sydney office as well. He talks about the ideas that you always disproportionately need to give more than you take, right? Going back to that friend's analogy, the friend that takes more than they give, you don't want anything to do with them. So the same thing happens in content. You want to follow a creator that's not trying to always sell to you. You want to follow a creator, you want to follow an account that's always giving you value. So for example, like The Economist, and everyone goes to The Economist because they know they're going to get the quality, this is what brand is, right? So just to touch on this as a segue, brand is basically being able to, like I said, get someone to do something because of the perception or the trust that you've earned with the brand. So brand can go both ways. So as an example, Apple's brand is one of the best brands in the world. The reason why it's one of the best brands in the world is because Apple has earned a reputation of producing quality electronics always. So you don't even know what's coming out next year, but people are happy to queue up outside the Apple store when they're about to release it because you know it's going to be good, right? People don't need to test it out and audit it and just make sure of that, right? But then negative brands are like knockoffs and Chinese duplicates. They go, well, it looks the same, but I don't know about the quality, right? You haven't earned that brand, right? Take, for example, I'll give you a couple of other examples, right? Mainstream examples. Conor McGregor, well-known UFC fighter, right? Started a whiskey brand. Whiskey brand's worth 600 mil. It's not even the best. It's not even the top 10 best whiskeys in the world. It's a terrible whiskey, right? And yet he's been able to produce that because of brand. The Rock, right? Terramana Tequila, worth $1.6 billion because of his brand, right?
David Beckham, what's he advertising at the moment? Underpants, the boss.
Yeah, he's got a lot. I mean, yeah, David owns Inter Miami, the football club, right? Yeah. That club, as soon as it launched, was worth like hundreds of millions of dollars just because Beckham was the owner, right? The last one's like Kylie Jenner for the ladies, Kylie Cosmetics. It's worth $1.8 billion. It's not even I don't use makeup, but from my understanding is not, a lot of girls don't use it because the only reason why you do it is because it's Kylie, it's attached to Kylie's brand. Well, you still have to have a decent product, right? Like you can't not have but you can get away with a lot more by having a really strong brand, right? So then the goal is like to go, well, how can we build up that level of brand and that trust that we can actually command something like this as well? And that takes time because a lot of those guys, whether it's Connor, whether it's The Rock, whether it's Kylie, whether it's Steve Jobs, right, whoever, they've spent so much time actually just building up that relationship capital over that period of time. And they do all this stuff without realizing. They're all masters at this, basically. They're naturals at it. Or they've just done enough reps that they're just really, really good at it. They've just done a lot of testing, have seen a lot of insights, and they're not romantic about, and they're not emotional about the performance of their content. They understand that the time horizon with content is not necessarily like a certain point in time, although there might be some goals that you guys want to set internally for the organization, but they understand that this stuff is in perpetuity. Content is something that you don't really stop, you just keep going, because the more you do, the more valuable it becomes.
I think the perfect example of that is whether you like cage fighting or not. You know, it's a horrible sport in some people's views. In other people's eyes, it's a fantastic, phenomenal sport. And it's brutal. He knows that he's going to attract an audience, which is, you know, the audience is this big. He only wants that slice. And of that slice, he wants that slice. And he knows that his behaviour is going to attract that particular client that wants to drink that particular type of alcohol. And his whole behaviour, which is sometimes far from becoming, has deliberately galvanised, built trust, brought about the ability to deliver a promise. So therefore he has a call to action, drink my whiskey and
You make a really good point. Have you guys ever heard of a piece of writing called 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly? So go check this out. It's a phenomenal piece, right? Kevin Kelly. So he's the founder of Wired magazine. 1,000 True Fans. No, you're right. I'll write it down here. Kevin Kelly is his name. You can just Google it. It looks like the website he's built it on looks like it's from the 1990s, like before the dot-com bust. It's like this old sort of Yahoo GeoCities type looking website. And he talks about, and this is a really good point that you're making with Connor and some of these guys, is they're not trying to endear themselves to the masses. They just want a small piece of that market, which is still significant, to just buy whatever it is that they want. And they will buy anything that he sells, right? He breathes, no, they'll buy it.
Well, they're getting their bodies tattooed exactly as his body is tattooed.
Yep. So the 1,000 True Fans concept is this concept he said, and he was basically saying, hey, you don't need millions and hundreds of thousands of followers, right? You don't need that. You just need 1,000 True Fans to pay you $100, right? And all of a sudden you can earn a living. Now, this was written 20 years ago, so $100,000 20 years ago was very different to $100,000 here. But it's not about the absolute numbers again, it's about the premise behind this. And that is to say, for example, in today's, maybe if you reappropriate today, adjusted for inflation, if you can get someone to pay you $300 and you have 1,000 people who are willing to pay that amount, right? It's not that hard to hit this number. And that's the big sort of breakthrough to understand, is that we're not gunning for like millions and millions and millions of followers here as well, right? And so the idea instead is to go, how do I endear myself to the 1,000 True Fans? The question is then, how do you find more of them until you hit this number?
How do you get past the paywall bit? You know, I'm there, you built the trust, you know, call to action, I now pay, turn off.
Yeah.
Versus, so as soon as you start to ask people for money, you know, they go away. How do you break through that paywall issue? And then secondly, $300 is nothing. However, $300 is something. People will go spend $300 on a meal easily in one sitting. They'll spend 3 times that.
Yep.
But to then cough up $300,000 to pay on a website to follow somebody.
Yep.
Or, you know, what's 300 divided by 12? Let's just make it 1,200, $100 a month. Oh shit, I'm not doing that.
Yep.
How do you break that objection?
Well, you're supposed to get there before then. You're supposed to hit that 7-11 4 and lubricate that relationship. Yeah? So you want to get to a stage where it's like, where he's like, well, this is a no-brainer. I believe in everything you do. I like you. I know you. I trust you. I love everything that you guys are sharing. Oh, you want me to donate a bit of money? Absolutely. I believe in the mission. I believe in the direction. And it's tax deductible as well. Yeah, exactly. So I want to show you an example that I just saw it on the weekend. This wasn't even planned. I saw this. Have you guys heard of this guy, Spanian? Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of context, and this is how mind blowing it is when I realised this. This guy, just so you know, Sydney guy, grew up in the housing commissions of Waterloo and Redfern. He was a heroin addict, and actually basically got locked up, I think, for most of his like adult life. So I think he's in his early 30s now.
What's his name?
Spaniard. Well, his real name's Anthony. I can't remember his last name, but he goes by Spaniard, which is
Spaniard.
yeah, Spaniard. This one, yep.
Oh.
So this man is, just as an example, right? And the reason why I want to show you, and I'll show you a specific video, right? Basically, his history is he was an ex-con. He got locked up, he came out, and then he sort of turned his career he became a bit of a rapper, as many do in this space. But what actually took him to the next level was he went onto YouTube and he started creating content. So he actually started out doing a few different formats. The first format was he was doing just food reviews, and he was this. If you listen to how he speaks, he's like your typical Westie, you know, sort of from the hood, you know, talks like basically an Eshe lad, you know, that kind of thing. And tattoos from head to toe, right? The photo probably doesn't show you as much, but he fundamentally is like your model rebel, essentially. Anyway, he started doing these pieces of content. He just started building an audience. Then he started to do these types of videos called Into the Hood, where he would actually go into, call it the most dangerous ghettos around the world. He'd travel around the world, and he'd just film himself, he'd vlog himself, and he'd just walk into like Barcelona's ghettos and just like check out these places. So the remarkability of him is already high. Like this is something that is not common, right? This guy's not like a YouTube expert, he doesn't package it up. He just fundamentally understands the concept of satisfaction, right? It's satisfying to watch him do this. Now, he recently actually did a video where he's now starting to go into like some really sketchy places. But one of the places he went to was, he went to Myanmar. So as some of you will know, it's like massive civil war, military dictatorship. And I've been to Myanmar myself, so I sort of have an idea. Yep, exactly. You know, internment camps and things like that, right? So the whole country is basically fighting against the army. And he went to, and this was the video under Life Under a Military Dictatorship. And I want to show you something. He basically vlogged himself. Because he's an ex-criminal, what's really funny is he sort of reformed himself to a situation where now he's a good Samaritan. He'll go to these places and he will actually just like showcase what life is like. And then, for example, take a look down here. He went into the ghettos of Myanmar, near Yangon, the capital city, and he basically got shown around by a Dutch guy who runs a not-for-profit there, and they're building schools out there for underprivileged kids. And so all he did was he showed up in Yangon, he showed you like what it was like and how crazy it was, got picked up by this Dutch dude, and for 2 days they basically went around the ghettos and the schools just to check out what this guy was doing. And it was so moving and people were so moved by it that he was like, you know what, I'm just gonna throw a link down the bottom, and if you wanna donate, just donate. And if you look at the comment section, because YouTube's incorporated this now, is this guy donated $120, this guy donated $100, this guy donated 23, 100, 50, 50, 20. From a guy who's basically an ex-criminal turned reformed, call it philanthropist, who's just a content creator, he's just an influencer. You just got to find out your format. You got to find out what sort of content you create in order to elicit that emotional reaction. And if you actually if you read the comments, basically, a lot of the comments were really just about, hey mate, like I can't believe your previous life was like this and now you're doing stuff like this. I'm here to support you because you are setting an example of like what people can do if they're given a second chance, right? So there's a lot of personal brand attached to that, but there's also just the mission of what he's doing basically as well, and getting people to believe the mission, that emotional satisfaction that people have. So I'm not saying be Spaniard, but I'm just using an example that someone like him is able to do something like this. So I think I'm just trying to show also how easily achievable this is, because if you can get that, then you really can. Now the thing is that one more example I want to show you, sort of the other end, is there was actually a TikTok creator who hosted a meet and greet. She had about 3 million followers. Her name was Grace Africa, if you look her up on TikTok. And she actually posted a video of this. She hosted a meetup at VidCon, which is the biggest content creator summit in the US. This was in, I think, San Diego. And no one turned up. And the reason why is because not all views are created equal. One view on YouTube is not the same as one view on TikTok. As meaning most people on TikTok don't even know the name of the creators that they follow. Whereas on YouTube, because of the 7-11-4 and the time and the rapport that you build, you have a deeper relationship, you have a strong parasocial relationship with that person, right? And so my advice here is whether you do a YouTube or whether or not you do a podcast, one of the two, that's what I'd be urging you guys to think about. And then from there, you can cut that up into short form content. You can take the best bits and then turn them into short form content as well. Yeah, you get correct, because you're talking about 40 minutes or 30 minutes, and then you're finding opportunities to then splice and dice that into content. So the way that basically works, just going back to my diagram, is fundamentally that. So you start off with like YouTube, and then you turn them into these short form content. And that goes up on LinkedIn, that goes up on TikTok, goes up on Instagram, goes up on Facebook. Any questions, I guess, about a lot of this? Because a lot of this is principles based. It's not necessarily like tactical or strategic, but it is very much so about understanding these platforms and how they basically work. Because these platforms each have a different way of doing it. So if I were to just draw out, just so you guys have a bit of consolidation with how you approach it, the idea is you start with a podcast, for example, or a YouTube long form content. And then that ends up going down to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can do SEO, so you can just turn it into writing, like articles. Okay, TikTok, and then you can actually even turn it into emails, like email marketing. So if you've got a database of supporters, right, email database, then this is a way to reactivate them or re-engage them as well. And so the idea then is this all builds towards 7, 11, and 4, which will then go to essentially a donation page, and then of course people support and donate, right? And people used to do these like all complex funnels and like, these little like Jedi mind tricks basically to get you part ways with your money. The point is that most of this should be doing the heavy lifting and just building that relationship capital, just to simplify that process a little bit. And it's partly because everyone spends their time on these platforms. But like I said, the variable to success between good and bad content is how do you actually master content that's actually going to get people to continue to watch content as well, right? So it's just mastering, obviously, all that packaging, the titles, the topics, the hooks, things like that as well. Okay, there's different ways to do it. But that's basically how I would approach it. It's the most leverageable way, which basically means, let's say once a week or once a fortnight, depending on everyone's time commitment, do one long form video. That's why, like this game, this is not easy. No, this is not easy. And I use the cooking analogies because it's like, people think it's like, oh, if you're a chef, like it's easy, you just whip up a dish, right? Like I'm like, no. You have so many micro skills, right? You need to learn how to like prep food. You need to know flavor combinations. You need to know how to saute, how to bake, how to fry. People oversimplify the process of creating content. They're like, oh, this is, we just whack something up and it'll work. But there's a difference between like, there's a spectrum.
So that brings me to the question, and of course I'm just the volunteer, so it's something to do with me, but it obviously takes time, and therefore it takes resources of staff and people who are obviously it's employment to do all this sort of thing. And what sort of time does it take? It must be quite a lot.
So I would say more of, like, if you're talking about the 80-20 of your time, the 20% that's going to get you 80% of the impact, I'll just show you. Yeah, Pareto's principle is this section here. Pick the right topic, decent packaging, good hook, and then just deliver, right? The problem where most people do it is they spend more time on this and the production quality. They're like, oh, I got to get the camera and the lighting. I'm like, yep, there's a basic foundation that you have to get right, but it's way less than you think. I've seen people with an iPhone, a lav mic like I've got on now, and some decent lighting, like one light that they bought. And that's all you need. You don't need much more than that. And so the reason why is because it's like a pyramid. It's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The foundation is you have to get the topic right, then you got to get the packaging right, then you got to get the hooks right, basically in that process.
And therefore, in your experience, it doesn't require sophisticated marketing experience as such to do this, but you have to understand the fundamentals, and there still needs to be boots on the ground, someone actually doing it.
Yeah. But some people are just, some people have common sense, some people have great hand-eye coordination, some people just got the natural, they do this stuff without realising they're doing it.
Yes, correct.
There are others who try and do it and will never quite get there.
Well, the variable to who does it effortlessly and becomes very good at it is what I call prosumers, like professional consumers, people who mimic or emulate the people that they follow. So usually the first point of call is to find someone who naturally already consumes, say, YouTube or content of the style that you're trying to emulate. So if you've got someone like, for example, who really likes to follow a certain creator in the way they do things, like a talking head, like I'll give you an example. I follow a guy called Marquez Brownlee who talks about, tech reviews, right? He's got a certain way in which he does his content and the way his videos are, right? And so This is his style. He's just talking to camera. There's like nothing sophisticated about the way he does it. Bit of light editing with a text in the background, things like that. And then just some beautiful cinematic like B-roll if he wanted to. But by all means, you don't even need this, right? As an example, there's a guy called Charlie Morgan, UK guy. Some of his videos are so simple in the way they are. I'm going to show you some of these, like, looks like this. It's like, it's not even good production quality, but people will sit through it, right?
I get rich online as soon as possible.
Well, topic.
Yeah, I've
So
been reading that.
topic is, that is, well, it's topic before even the hook, right? So that's packaging. The title's the packaging, the thumbnail's the packaging. The actual production quality just doesn't matter all that much because people are already invested because they've got the topic that they're interested in. And as long as you get your hook right and you got your packaging right, you're already like 80% of the way there, right? And then your job is just to satisfy that person and make sure that they feel like it's worth their while watching the content as well. So that's kind of like, not saying that you do something like this, but it's like you can see the bar is not that high. So again, just your level of expertise, like your remarkability, is the most. If I were to put remarkability, it has to be up here. Remarkability. So what's your unique advantage? Like what makes you guys? What do you guys have an advantage on? So yeah, you get topic right, you get packaging right, you get hooks right, and then the rest just takes care of itself.
There's so much stuff out there. I mean, how do you
decide?
and yeah, the world's a lot of. There's 3 billion people in the world, or whatever the number is, 2.7, I think.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's close to 3 billion, 3.2.
Yep.
But there's so much, and the more of this is happening, people are accelerating, and there's more, and there's going to be more, and then there's going to be more, and more.
Yep.
Is this going to get to a point where everyone just glazes over and it's just a waste of time?
I don't think so. I think what it'll do is it'll just cream rises to the top when it comes to this, right? And that is that if you're good, you're still going to win regardless, right? It's like the housing market. They go, oh, is it too expensive to buy now? I'm like, well, it's going to be more expensive tomorrow than it was yesterday. So,
Prices drop.
well, unless they drop, right? So obviously, I think with content, I don't see creation or supply of content receding. If anything, I see it increasing. And so all of these platforms, it's just demand and supply, right? I've got this much demand of content, and then I've got this much supply. Then it's just a case of where does it get distributed to? And so like if you only have a certain amount of hours in your day, you're only going to spend so much time on your favorite podcasts or your favorite YouTubers or your favorite influencers, right?
And also, it's all about, these are the platforms that speak to the audiences now. It will evolve and change over time, and you keep moving with that. You move with the cheese, because that'll be something we don't even know about now.
Correct. And I'll show you something very specific that will be very helpful with topic selection that will actually take away the guesswork for you as well, okay? So there is a tool, which when you guys get the opportunity, called 1 of 10. So 1 of 10 was actually a tool developed by a bunch of YouTubers who basically wanted to stop guessing, what are the best topics? Like they were throwing spaghetti at a wall, right? And so 4 out of 10 of them will stick. They wanted a higher probability. They wanted 8 out of 10 to work, right? So 1 of 10 basically is a tool that you can purchase, but it's very cheap. It's like $15 a month or something like that. And basically what it does is it can help you identify outlier content on a specific channel. More specifically, it will identify outlier videos. So an outlier by definition is basically a data point that is outside of the norm, right? So it could be a negative outlier or a positive outlier, right? So a positive outlier is outperforms the norm, and then a negative is underperforms the norm. So in the world of YouTube, we're talking about an outlier video is essentially a video, a positive outlier video is a video that has done better than the average performance of a video on that channel. So what it does is it measures the average view count of 10, 20 videos that it's done recently around that same time, plus against the number of subscribers that thing has got.
Just define channel, please.
Channel? Channel could be YouTube channel, or it could be Instagram account, it could be Facebook page.
One of the
Where the video is hosted. Yep.
X is a channel.
That's a platform. Yep. Spanion is a channel, for example, right? So for example, once you've installed it, you can install it as a Chrome extension. So tell me if I'm not making sense, but Chrome extension is essentially just, it's just like a tool that you install on your browser that basically, it's like a software within your browser. And so very easy to install, but once you've got it installed, do you guys see, you won't see it in your own YouTube browser. Do you see these numbers, 0.9, 0.8, 1.1, 0.9, 0.9? These are multipliers. So a 0.9x video means it performed 0.9 of what it should have. 1 as meaning it performed on average. And so anything under 1 is underperforming. Anything over 1 is overperforming. Now there's a book called Still Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. So he talks about that there's no such thing as original ideas anymore. Everything's a remix. And so I think that can't be more true in the world of just content and YouTube as well. I think everything's been done. And so what you want to do is you want to find winning topics, because if you get topics right, then you've already done a big part of that work, right? You picked a topic that people are inherently interested in, because if you don't pick one, then you've got a problem, right? It doesn't matter what you do downstream of that. You're going to struggle to retain attention. It's unsustainable. So what we do is, for example, let's take, for example, I'm just populating all of these videos, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort the channel based on the biggest outlier, positive outlier, to the lowest. You can actually do this with this tool. Then you look at channels, you find channels that ideally have a good body of work. You know, they have a good number of subscribers, over say 20, 30,000, probably publish at least 20 or 30 videos. That's usually a good indication. And you just go in and you just load up all the videos. You assort from descending to ascending, as meaning the biggest outliers to the worst outliers. And you just go in and you just watch the content and you go, okay, why is this content doing so well? Is it based on the topic? Is it based on the packaging? Is it based on the hooks? What is it based on, right? What are we seeing here? Is it satisfying to watch? And over time, because you watch it so much, you start to get very good at pattern recognition, and you start to be able to tell what's good and what's bad, right? So in a lot of ways, it's a research tool. It's a tool that helps you eliminate, you're using data instead as a way to identify winning topics and winning videos as a starting point for you guys as well, right? So that's how I would definitely approach it. So I think it's definitely like an outlier, and you can analyze the internal performance of your video as well. I think that if you look at the subsequent videos, most of them are sort of in the hundreds, and nothing over 1,000 there as well. So the data is probably not significant enough for you to come to many conclusions there as well. So instead, you generally want to go and do competitor research, call it competitor, but like just other channel research, and then find opportunities there as well, right? One example I can give was there's a British gentleman during COVID times. I don't know if you guys followed him, John Campbell. Here's his name. Okay. This is why Topic is such a... You know him? Yep.
Yeah, I follow him.
Yep. So he...
He's very outspoken.
Very incredibly outspoken. And if you look at his production quality, he still uses an overhead projector.
With his old overhead.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Oh, yeah. And use individual slides.
Yeah, and
on the side.
He's figured out how to like swap between the two inputs. And so again, he's a kind of example of production quality doesn't matter. Topic, you get it right. And because during COVID, that was the topic, like as long as you talked about it.
He's a GP.
Oh, he's a GP, is he? Okay.
He's a British GP.
Got it.
And he's very critical of the NHS.
NHS, yeah, well, the government handlings of the whole thing. Yeah. So in his case, during COVID times, he had outliers that were going through the roof. That's how that was his fame. Oh, there you go, vitamin D. So my point here is that just be careful though when you sort of analyze other channels, because he can sort of, like guys like him or Mr. Beast or some of these like well-known creators, they can just put anything up on a thumbnail and a title and he'll get clicks because they've got such a recognizable face. They've got fame essentially now.
They've been around for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So you might not take away much from packaging with someone like John, but you can, certainly from a topic perspective, be able to find the right topics as well. You've got to sort of trawl through the internet and find that research. But I find this really, I don't know, maybe I'm just a bit weird, but I actually find it enjoyable finding these topics, because for me, I used to have to guess. I used to have to just throw spaghetti at a wall and I don't know if I'm wasting my time or if it's going to hit or not and it's going to do well. Now I can literally, with a high probability, with a confidence percentile of like 80, 90%, that I think the content will be quite good.
Thoughts, idea. Well, that was absolutely brilliant, Kan. Thank you so much. You're a natural born. You should be on bloody YouTube yourself. It's a really, really good presentation.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. How often do you push this content? Like
Frequency?
Initially?
How often you post?
Yeah.
As much as you guys can. Because if you,
so it's
it's
heavy.
What's
Yeah.
Is that twice a day, or is it once a week, or once?
Didn't you say once a fortnight to start?
Yeah, I'd start with once a fortnight, because once a month, okay, think about it as iteration cycles, right? So if you put a video out once a month, you get 12 points of data to to figure out how to improve. If you did it weekly, it's 52 cycles if you did it every single week without stopping. So it's there's no magical number. It's like a mix between like what is sustainable for you guys, how much time you've got, and how much resource you've got. But the answer is as much as possible. And that could be as much as multiple times a day if you could get away with it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because there's a direct correlation between quantity versus like growth. Like the more that you put out.
Yeah.
And it's not like blindly doing it without realizing what to do. Most of the great creators out there are looking at their data and they're improving it as they go.
Yeah.
So I've sort of given you guys the framework so that that's helpful for you guys to sort of understand, so that you're not just getting to the end of it going, oh, we've done 50 videos, but we haven't grown at all, because that's a problem. It means that you haven't been able to self-evaluate and actually improve on the content that you've done. I always say like humans haven't changed, like the way people behave hasn't changed. We're all the same. It's just the platforms that we spend our time on have just changed. And this is what it's like now, but who knows what it's like 2 years down the track. This will change. Yeah, like I said, SEO was such a big thing back then. Now it's not. TV, you know, TV killed the radio. Social media is killing TV now. YouTube's killing Netflix right now. TikTok came about 3 years ago and just absolutely killed all the social media platforms. So WhatsApp wouldn't be constituting a social media platform, but it's more of a messaging platform. Well, they are rolling out components of it. Who knows? Because Meta, Zuckerberg, he's got big plans.
Spotify?
Spotify is going after YouTube because Spotify is introducing video onto its platform.
Yeah.
And that's why they signed Joe Rogan for like 2 years and he couldn't post on YouTube. So they're all competing for attention. Like attention is where the money is spent as well.
How can we help you?
Oh, that's a good question.
And maybe take it on notice, but you've helped us. It goes back to topic, hook, practice, trust, 7, 11, 4. And what I was talking about earlier is not transactional. One transaction, I pay you, I get you, you walk away, I walk away, never talk again. The other way, how can we build a relationship that we can help you?
I mean,
take it away and think about it.
Yeah, I'll have a think about it. But look, honestly, I think, you know, as humble as it might sound, I'm just a small business owner. You know, a guy who just actually really loves content and marketing. Like I grew up on it. So this feels very natural for me. Like it, you know, in a previous career, I used to run hotels and hospitality, and then I just jumped ship and moved to this because of COVID. So at least, you know, say on a business level, if there's anyone that you believe that might benefit from the stuff that I just taught, absolutely. Like I'd be very open to it.
All right, well,
fantastic.
I think, Kan, that phenomenal. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your presentation, you deserve a 10 out of. I'm a hard marker. You deserve a 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
Georgia and Tony, I never
That's
give.
high praise.
I never give 10
Right.
out of 10.
No, thank you.
Ever.